systems shouldn't get in our way. They should help us do our job, but learning those tools can feel heavier than it should. Too many topics, too many best practices, especially in the ever-changing Atlassian ecosystem. Not here. You're tuned in to the only frequency that doesn't crash your spirits or your Jira board. Atlassian Learning Simplified. Welcome to Heen.tech. Heen.tech for your learning needs. Heen.tech. Less noise, more clarity. Heen.tech. Fix the system, fix the flow. Heen.tech. Ready, let's go!
I always get a kick out of that opening. A massive thank you to my friend Sujit for putting that together. All right, folks, I need to adjust the display a bit. But we are here to talk about the ACA-905. And I don't need that. I'll put a little banner on the screen. This is Jira Board Administration. There we go. Got a nice banner. Boop. Now, I'm doing this stream. This is going to be everything you need to know about this exam. I'll cram in as absolutely much as I possibly can because this exam is going away. At some point in June, we will no longer be able to take this exam. So we won't be able to earn the certification after that date. I don't know the exact date yet. As soon as I know that, I'll do my best to share it. But even if you don't earn the certification, going through this studying is still a great step because you're going to learn how to configure Jira boards. And this is a skill that is important for everyone to learn just how these things work. In July, did I get it wrong? This is going out in July. The ACA 910 was just retired in June. Either way, we don't have a lot of time if we want to earn this. Oh, they've got the date up, Justin. Thank you. Shout out to Justin, one of my channel members, and keeps me honest with the dates of things. So appreciate your support and your help in keeping everything safe or straight. We do also have a vertical stream. Welcome to everyone in that. I'll try and keep an eye on both. Otherwise, folks, I'm going to put a goal up. Make this a 2-hour goal. Host a Zoom follow-up study hall. I do this all professionally. I do all the YouTube stuff for free. So I will ask for your support from time to time. And I'll also talk about some courses I'm offering, including one that has an exam voucher for the ACA 905. So I have a bundle of courses where if you want to earn this certification, it's a very economical way of doing it. I'll talk about that as we go, though. JW is saying, yes. Now, in the case of the 910, which is not this certification, they are making a certificate out of it. So we can be on the lookout for Atlassian to start looking at its certifications. And in some cases, they might retire an ACA, a certified associate level, and turn it into an ACH, Atlassian certificate holder. I'm going to quickly grab this screen, and we're going to start out just by talking about what this certification covers and like what we'll learn in the next 2 to 3 hours. Welcome to the vertical stream. And again, folks, if you're joining us, we are studying to be Jira board certified admins. Now, under the site learning, we've got credentials. This lists every Atlassian certification, the ACH, the ACA, etc. And what we're looking for down here under Atlassian Certified Associate is the Jira board configuration. So this is what we'll be studying for the next 2 to 3 hours, depending on how quick we can go. Please use the chat to put in questions. You'll also see me pop up live from Michigan. Welcome, Christy. Also pop up polls and other things just to ask questions. Curious if you use boards. Yes. Scrum. Yes. Kanban. Nope. Woo, I got a spell. Other comments. So I'm going to drop a quick poll. In the chat, just send a 1, 2, 3, or 4 to respond to the poll, but curious if folks use boards in their job. Now, this exam, it's being offered at a discount, $50 to take it. Usually these are $100. So Atlassian is making this more accessible until it's, until the discounted price ends. But this exam will disappear. If you earn this, it's good for 2 years. And if you already have it, it's automatically extended. So I earned this a while ago. So my version of this will be good until 2028. and then it will disappear. There will probably be something that replaces it. I don't know what would replace it, but just keep in mind there could be something new that comes out from Atlassian. Now, this exam specifically covers how we configure boards, like what options there are, and also what types of boards there are. So generally Kanban and Scrum, and we'll talk about the features that are available. We'll get hands-on too with the actual buttons we'll push in Jira, but we also need to consider like what the boards support. And this is important to remember. Every certification, every technical system supports a team to do something. In this case, we'll have to learn how a team has requirements. We need to track our work over, a period of time, or we need to improve our throughput. So we can expect exam questions not only on what buttons do we push to make estimation work. We can expect questions on a team needs to accomplish blank. How do we convert that? Christy, we might be very near to each other. I happen to live in Berkeley, at least you mean California. All right. And most of us use some kind of board, most of Kanban. Interesting. I say that because typically I trip over folks who use Scrum. And this is designed mainly for project managers and development leads. So most people, most of the time, will not be configuring boards, and that's okay. This is more for the people who are managing and administering things. We're talking about the ACA-905 Jira board config exam. I'm just leaving a chat for our friends in the vertical side. All right. Now, this exam is broken up. We'll talk more about this, but it's a fairly even split. I did a study session this morning for an exam where 63% of the topics were all in one thing. This we need to understand a little bit more about it. The single biggest area, though, is the permissions and filtering. And so really like these four chunks are all of the hands-on. So Atlassian is telling us, hey, we have to know what buttons to push to make it go. That's the important part of this. 16% of that exam, though, are the types and the concepts. So we still need to understand it, but really we want to focus on the how do we configure it? What do the buttons do? Welcome from Massachusetts. Dawn, good to see you. We'll have up to 30 questions and 68 questions. So we have to answer about 22 correct. When you take the exam, don't aim for the minimum. Make your goal to be hit 100%. And then as long as you get over the line, you're good. And you get 60 minutes. Now, this is proctored. So if you choose to take this exam, you'll be self-proctoring. You'll need I'll talk more about this towards the end, but a room you can sit in where you won't be interrupted. But this is the exam we're working on. Welcome from London, people. All right. That's just our orientation. We're going to jump in. What you're going to see me do is go back and forth between some slides where I break down the concepts and ideas, and then into Jira to show you these concepts and ideas. Please drop questions. These next 2 to 3 hours are for everyone watching, both on the recording and also live. So please use the comments to drop questions. Let me know what you're curious about so I can help you be successful. And again, as we go, I'll explain other resources you have to help you study and potentially earn this certification. Use the chat. Also, I'm a professional content creator. I can't say professional YouTuber, but any support you can provide, even just liking the stream, would be immense. I have other ways you can help support me as we go. I'll babble about those later. I do also have some goals going. If we meet the goal in YouTube, I'll host a Zoom study session. So more hands-on, more like think one-on-one small group. But to get started, this is the beginning of the exam concepts. So we're going to just get some Jira basics. I won't assume folks know everything about Jira or the basic concepts, so I'll make sure we understand those. Those basic concepts, while they are basic, are still very important. We have to understand how work items behave to know how to set up our board. Then we'll talk about just what boards are and the two main flavors of board. We've got Kanban and we've got Scrum. Then we'll talk about how to use boards. So again, this is that 18% that is the conceptual aspects of it. And then we'll jump into actually touching the boards. Again, here's our breakdown. I'll bring this up from time to time just to remind us we're focused mainly on this 16% right now, as well as some general things about Jira that we need to know to be successful. Okay, this is not on the exam, but curious why folks are here. And I'll put this in chat. Curious why folks are here learning with me. Now, I always ask this because why we choose to learn something is really important. I chose to earn these certifications to build out my skills. because I was never trained. And that means I missed a lot of stuff. I didn't know how estimation worked in boards. I didn't realize you could change the board filter. All of that knowledge would have helped me in my job be better at my job. I was an IT project manager. Now I'm an independent creator, but still, it rounded out my skills. It helped me figure out, how do I use these tools to best support folks? There's many reasons though. You can do this to build your skills. You can do this to validate your skills, to like prove to yourself or someone else. And sometimes jobs require them. And you can see I've copied in the wrong text here. This is for the ACA-905, not this other thing. But take a minute to think about your why. Why are you here with me? And especially if you're planning on taking the exam, that why is really, really, really going to help you out. Are you intending to take the ACA-905 exam? Yes. No. I'll put a quick question here. Not signed up yet. Yes. Signed up. All right. And also curious if folks are intending on taking the exam. Georgia is just getting started. Moved back into Jira from Azure DevOps, and used to be on Jira Server. Oh, my friend, so much will have changed. Currently, we're on Jira Cloud, but there are different versions of Jira that have existed. Jira Server was retired, I think, 2 years ago. There's also Jira Data Center. We're going to explicitly talk about cloud right now, but many of the concepts still work. The Baffled Owl King, completely self-taught. Yes, this was me. I learned by doing. I learned through painful experience, and that meant I missed a lot of stuff. Justin, building skills and only worked in Jira Service Management. I will point out that boards are stereotypically thought of as being only in Jira and stereotypically thought of as being only for agile project development, but boards can help any team manage things. We've got Jay over on LinkedIn. Need to be trained to show proof of concept. Yes. Sometimes our job demands it. We want to be able to do it. People is taking this next Friday. Yeah, it is a good deal. $50 instead of $100. I also have a learning course over on my site where you can get full recordings of this, as well as an exam certification for even cheaper. I'm able to offer these, and I have a bundle here that includes the 910. I need to add it back in, but for $45, you can get both. Or you can get just the 905, either with the exam certification for 30 or just the knowledge for 8. So I'll put some of these links in the chat if folks are curious, but just trying to help people earn the certification if it's something they want to do. But this why is really important. We will cover all the topics today. However, you will also need to study and prepare on your own. Your why will help you. Okay, super basics. You can tell I wrote this a long time ago. It mentions projects. These are now called spaces. Spaces are just a collection of work items. Mr. Jean-Baptiste, a Confluence SME and project manager, you want to be able to navigate your boards. That is an excellent reason. Being forced or told you must use something and not knowing how to do it is like one of the worst possible combinations of things. That's what I went through. I'll drop a QR code at the top with more information about the courses if folks are interested. But our space, or formally project, is a collection of work. Now, these are called work items. Formally, these are called issues. But every space can have a different configuration. Your space might help you with service management. Your space might help you with a project. It might help you with anything else. Christy, I really appreciate that. I'm glad you find these informative. But the project or the space is where the board lives in cloud. So when we think of our boards, a board lives in one and only one space. Boards, however, can pull in work items from multiple spaces. We'll talk about this as we go. But basically, the space is how we organize our work. And there's no wrong way to do it. It is up to us as people learning to configure boards to understand how they're being used. Navs SMB, if you're using Jira and you're a project manager, this course will be beneficial. You'll get the skills. You don't have to take the exam. You don't have to buy anything from me at all. We'll cover all the concepts here, but the knowledge of how these boards work for me was really, really possible. The exam. Sorry, I'm catching up on comments. Taking the exam can be a good thing to have on your resume. It proves to others you've passed a bar. But practically, it's more about the how does it work? And that's what we'll go through today. I will walk you through all the configuration you need. And this video is free on YouTube forever. Please use it. I have the other options if you want them. But then we've got work items. So a space is a collection of work items. A space will have many work items, thousands. But a work item will live in one and only one space. And the work item is what we're going to be manipulating when we get to a board. So we really need to understand how our team uses these work items. We'll have different kinds of work. We'll have epics to track bigger projects or milestones. We'll have stories to track other things. It looks like most of us want to take the ACA-905. So hopefully I can help get you prepared. And if you're looking for a deal, even better than the one you see online, hit that QR code. Justin's got a great question. Should we create a space to play with if we don't have one? What I will do when we go hands-on is make a brand new space and show you how to make a board from scratch. So I'll make sure everyone knows how to do that. But the work item, individual piece of work, one important thing to know that will come back later when we talk about configuring are fields. A work item will have many fields. We can take some of those fields and show them on the board. We don't have to, but it is an option we have to make our team's lives a little bit easier. And that's where, as a project manager, that would have been very helpful to me. I could include more information on the board view so people could see it. But that's a work item. Now, every work item has one and only one workflow. This is just a series of statuses the work can move through. It is possible for these to not have too much control. In this example, this little any box is telling me any status can move to any other status. Your workflow directly impacts the board, though. When we go to configure our board, we're going to see that we can't move between board columns if there's no transition, if the workflow doesn't support it. As a board configurator, as a board admin, we cannot change the workflows. We can change the columns on the board, and we can tell the board these statuses go to these columns, but we can't have a work item transition that doesn't exist. For example, if accepted only goes to done, on my board, I can't have accepted go to testing. I'll make an example of this so we can see it, but the workflow is a really important topic that we as board admins have to understand. I will show you all how to go see the workflow on the tickets so you can understand them. And a quick welcome to the folks on the vertical stream covering off our Jira board configuration. Oops. Okay, so that's all the background Jira knowledge. Next, we're going to talk about what are boards, and then we'll jump in and we'll make one from scratch. They're just a way to visualize work. Historically, this would have been a literal like a board on the wall in your office where you'd have sticky notes. Many groups can still do that. The problem is you all have to be in the same spot. You all have to, be in the same office for that to work. And for distributed teams, like that's basically impossible. I guess here's a question. Who works with a team that is entirely co-located in the same office? Does anyone work in a team that's all in the same spot? And I'm asking because I have not met many people who have that, I'll say, luxury. But I'm curious if anyone does. All right, we've got those two courses set up. Brilliant. Every team I've worked on since my first job pretty much has had remote teams. So the board gives us a way to share that. Now, they're very common in Agile projects. So as an Agile project manager, we would have a Scrum board or a Kanban board. Georgia, LOL, no. Yep. That's kind of what I'm expecting, right? Like, not many of us have ever worked in an environment where we're all in the same space. And this means having a physical board is basically impossible. Oh, wow. Justin, when he worked in the Detroit Zoo, there are some environments where you will be co-located. Manufacturing, if you're building a thing, you're probably all in the same site. Most Agile work, though, is distributed. You have a virtual team. So the boards are very powerful. Many teams, though, can benefit from them, not just Agile. You don't have to be doing Agile to see this. I like it because it shows me my work in a different way. Humans are very visual. Looking at a list of work items can be confusing, can be hard to track. So by having the board that has these nice columns that organize things, it's a bit easier to visually work on them. And that's the first major part of a board, are columns. Now, these relate to some stage in a process. The column is, you typically move left to right. So my ticket starts in to do, and then architecture review, coding, testing, accepted, released. Um, and you can have one or more workflow statuses in each column. We will talk more about this as we go, but just keep in mind the columns on the board do not have to match the statuses in the workflow. You can also rename them. Jaw, thank you much for liking the stream. I appreciate that. That is the simplest way to support me, and that is immense. Thank you, my friend. Um, Dawn is saying they saw a board in person on Silicon Valley, the TV show, and thought it was crazy. There is an argument that a in-person board is very powerful because the whole team can stand in front of it and have discussions over what's the best way to make things move. The problem is most of us are never in the same space, like the same physical location, right? So they have to be digital. Now, in addition to the columns, though, we can also put rows in our boards. These are called swimlanes or groups. They are optional, but they allow us to, again, better sort and understand our work. In this example, I've told Jira, group everything by the assignee. So this row is only work assigned to admin. This row is only stuff assigned to Alana. There are different groupings we can do, and we'll understand that as we go through this course. And then on the board itself are cards. Now, the card just represents a piece of work. So each work item that is part of the board gets represented as one of these little boxes. And this is what most people, most of the time, are working on. They will click and drag these little boxes around, these cards, to indicate where something is in the process. So when we work with a team, I might configure the board, and my team will have all of these cards that are moving around the board. So these can also be configured. We've got a session, part of this session later will be covering how do we tell Jira what fields you want to be displayed? Do you want the epic shown, etc.? There is some stuff that is always shown on the card, like the work item key or the ticket number right here, and then the summary, what the ticket is. But this is where if you're working with a team, they're most likely looking at this the whole time, and then just moving their work items around as they're assigned work. Oh, all right. That's the basic concept. We're going to pop over to Jira Cloud. And again, I'm working in a demonstration instance, and I need to go find it. I think it was this one. This will look similar in every flavor of Jira Cloud. Keep in mind, I'm in a demo instance. So all the data I have is placeholder data. It's been seeded with information, but it will look different than a real environment because there's no real humans in here using it. To go back to Justin's question, somewhere back here, if you're following along on your own, or if you just want to know, you can make a brand new space. Now, I can do this. I have the permission in this instance. You may not. Most of the time, we won't be able to make a new space. But from scratch, I would just click Make a Space. And there are some templates in here. If I go under like software development, I've got a Kanban template and I've got a Scrum template. I do not have to use these templates. I could make a blank one. But for this example, let's say we want to do Scrum. I'll just click on Scrum. It will tell me a little bit about it. And then I'll click Use Template. Now we'll talk more about what Scrum is as we go, but maybe I'll call this space Scrum Example. And I'm going to make it a company managed. I will talk about the difference between company and team managed as we go, but we're going to start with this. And Jira will make this new space. I'll choose to add people later. I don't want to do this right now. And you'll notice right away, I drop on the board. So this is my space, Scrum Example, and I have a board that right now is blank. And that's because I haven't added any work to it. For most of this session, I'll be using a different space to demonstrate because I have example data, but they all start out blank. And in the case of Scrum, I have a backlog where I can add additional work. The backlog is work that I have been asked to do, but haven't committed to doing yet. So think of it like the pile of stuff on your desk that you never really get around to. It's just floating around and eventually you'll take it on. I'm going to go over, though, to a space that has a lot of stuff in it. This is an example of a Kanban board. Kanban is a little bit different than Scrum. It's focused more on continuous work and continually improving workflows. But here I can see my column, my Kanban board, and I can see it's got some kind of grouping. I'm going to ungroup this. And so here I can see a bunch of work on the board. I've got my columns. I've got one for to do, one for in progress, and one for done. And as I'm working, I might say, okay, password security update. I can click and drag it. And now I have an option of where to send it. So when I mentioned earlier, the columns can match the statuses, but don't have to. In this case, my in progress column has 3 different statuses. So I do have to be careful. I make sure my team knows about this. People tend to just blindly click and drag, but I might say it's to do, it's in progress right now, and I'll drop it into the column. And then Jira will just visually move it over to the right column, update the numbers, and I can keep working. So this is a board, and these cards each represent a different work item, something I'm expected to be doing, and then it's up to me to move it around the board successfully. All right, that is a super high-level orientation. What specific questions y'all got? I don't see anything in chat, which must means we're all good to go. If there's no questions, we're going to keep on trucking. All right. Open question in chat. Who uses Agile methodologies at work? Which ones? I like this. I realized my desk was covered in Post-it note. It's not messy. I just have a personal Scrum board right at my fingertips. That's one way to do it. JW, we'll dig more into groups, but groups are swim lanes. It's just a terminology difference. So you'll see swim lane when I'm talking to someone, but when you're looking at the board in Jira, the button is called group. So there's just that minor difference. Now, in my experience, everyone wants to be agile, but not everyone uses agile methodologies. We will mainly be talking about Kanban and Scrum. So those are the 2 main ones we'll see here. Georgia uses Kanban. Amazing. Justin's not familiar enough with Agile to know if you do it or not. No worries. We are going to cover some of the basics of Agile for 2 reasons. It will show up on our exam. You will have questions around these methodologies. You don't have to be a super expert. We have to know a little bit, though, because when we talk to our team, when Georgia comes to me and says, Rob, I need a new Jira board, I'll have to ask some questions to learn more about what they need to do. And knowing a little bit about Agile is really important for that. We will also see how Jira can support these methodologies. Now, these are only 2 different Agile methodologies. There are many, many others. There are combinations of these. There is Scrumban, there's Moscow, there's a whole bunch of others. The idea behind Agile, though, is it can more quickly respond to changing business demands than a more traditional way of managing projects, something like waterfall or prescriptive. Data K is saying Agile all day. Yep. Most of us are probably using some aspects of Agile if we don't realize it. But typically, you'll have someone named a Scrum Master that tells you Scrum. But typically in software development, we're using some kind of Scrum. Kanban actually started in vehicle manufacturing with Toyota. And I'll explain more about that as we go. But these are just tools. One is not better than the other. One is not always the best option. It depends on your circumstance and your needs, which is where we as the admins come in. We take our domain knowledge of Agile and why it's useful, and we help people apply it to Jira. If you're just joining us from the vertical stream, welcome. We're talking about the ACA-905, the Jira board configuration certification offered by Atlassian, specifically what is Scrum and Kanban. All right, so Scrum. Anytime you hear the word sprint, anytime you hear the word iteration, that is Scrum. Scrum breaks down work into these iterations, also called sprints, and sprints typically last 1 to 4 weeks. The goal is to have the team focus on a little bit of work and then complete it all in that sprint. Typically, they're 2 weeks, so I typically use that as my example. They could technically be longer, but then they kind of get unfocused. But groups that you're using Scrum look at their workload and they say, for the next 2 weeks, we can do this much work, or we're going to commit to this much and ignore the rest. Christy uses some Agile. Yeah, the concept of a stand-up comes from Agile, the concept of a retrospective, etc. Mostly Scrum and Kanban. We'll talk more about how these are set up, and you can have both in Jira. But the idea of this sprint is for 2 weeks, we're just going to focus on this group of things. That allows the team to really focus in and get that stuff done. However, it does also require that the team knows how to pick that work and who's going to do that. A lot of this will be outside the scope of this session because we're focused on this certification. However, the main focus is these sprints, these iterations. The team says every 2 weeks, I need to work on just some amount of stuff. How do I track that amount of stuff? That's what our board does. The screenshot here is an active sprint, probably the start of one, because most of the work is over here in to do. as time goes on, you'll see these start to move left to right. And hopefully by the end of the sprint, everything is completed so the team can take a new bucket of work. People is saying we use Jira Service Management, which is mostly queue. There is a Kanban option. Yes. Historically, maybe you did not have access to boards in Jira Service Management. But next time we go hands-on, remind me if I don't show you, you can have boards in JSM, Jira Service Management. You can even have boards in your queue, people. Same for you, Justin. Boards do show up in your queues. You just have to go find them. Now, okay, so you might be thinking, great, we're doing Agile. We agree to work for 2 weeks, but there's a lot of work we're not doing in those 2 weeks. Where does that go? There's a thing called a backlog. I've got a leading question for folks. I'm going to put in a poll. Are backlogs unique to Scrum? Yes. No. No idea. Oh, don't mean to be all caps. No idea. There we go. So just a poll, answer 1, 2, or 3 in the chat. Are backlogs unique to Scrum? Or you might think of this as another way. Could you have a backlog in a Kanban project? If you think, oh, backlogs only show up in Scrum, give me a 1. If you think they can show up in other places, give me a 2. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, do a 3. So this backlog is just the collection of work that we haven't agreed to do yet. So this is pretty powerful. It means our team can focus on small pieces of work, and we can accomplish bits of work every sprint. And then our team can keep collecting other requests. I might get a request to build a new training class. I go, great, that's an amazing request. I don't have time right now. Put it in the backlog. I'm tracking what it is. Getting a lot of votes here for no, and someone has no idea. Totally fair. Anyone think that backlogs are only in Scrum? Now, we can also in Jira plan out multiple sprints. Usually in Agile, we're more concerned with the immediate future, the next month. So we won't be planning out sprints, in 6 months. And that's because Agile allows us to change what we're doing. At the end of a sprint, we can then take on new work. The requirements of the business might change. Great, we can do that. And that's why it's called Agile. We can modify and change the project plan as we go, but it's because we have the backlog. We're collecting all the requests, and then we're making a decision every sprint on what we're going to work on. And that can change. We could plan out the next sprint, and when we get to it, we realize, ooh, we should start swapping out work, and then we commit to it. So let's contrast that with Kanban. As we'll see when we go live, you can have a backlog in Kanban. So it's not a guarantee. If you go into Jira and see a backlog, that doesn't guarantee you're in Scrum. If you see the word sprint, you are in Scrum. So that's the thing to keep in mind. Kanban doesn't use sprints. Kanban is more focused on optimizing a workflow. This started in manufacturing, I think, with Toyota and cars, and they wanted to figure out, how do we make sure that the right point of the assembly line has exactly what they need to build the car? So there's never a stoppage because Rob doesn't have enough doors or Data K doesn't have enough gaskets or whatever. So in this case, what we're looking at in the columns isn't something we said we'd do in 2 weeks. It's just where stuff is in the workflow. Now, typically pending work will be in the leftmost column. I will show you how you can use a backlog and Kanban. It allows you to have a bigger stockpile of stuff to pull from, but it's focused on that workflow. It's focused on making sure everyone knows, hey, we've agreed to work on 3 things at once. There's 4 things here. We got to drop something because that's distracting the team. Now, work can move in both directions. That depends on the workflow underlying it, but you might have something in progress and then think, oh, I got to put that back in the to-do column because we took too much on. That's okay. The idea is to optimize the workflow so everyone knows what's going on. We do also have something called a work in progress limit. This is not unique to Kanban. You can have these in a Scrum board. And this basically just shows you, hey, the team said you'll have at minimum 1 thing in progress and at most 3. If it's red, you're going over the max. It's just a visual indication that you said you could do up to 3, but you've got 19 in here. The team is probably not focused on what they should be doing. If it's yellow, you're under your minimum. So this example, I'm over my max. This is that workflow optimization. The team will sit down and decide, hey, there's 5 of us on the team. We'll have no more than 5 things in progress because each of us is working on 1 thing at a time. If we need to, we could take one of these and put it back to in progress, put it back to do, or finish it, But until that happens, we're not taking more work. So that's the in-progress limit. That is not unique to Kanban, but most Kanban groups are using this. Okay, so a quick compare and contrast. This is a Kanban board. One thing I'll point out, the name of this tab does not necessarily match what the board is. I might call this Scrum board and really confuse my team. I know this is not Scrum because there's no sprint over here that talks about, there's no button over here that talks about sprints. JW saying, work in progress good. Yes, work in progress good. We will talk more about that when we get into configuration. I will rename this so I don't confuse us later. But again, I don't see a button about sprints over here. That's Kanban. That's how I know. There is a backlog though. So I'm going to go into this. This is a Kanban board. And there's two things I'll get on the Kanban board. A to-do. This is the leftmost column of the board. So if I go to the board, I've got a to-do list with 4 things. If I go to the backlog, I've got a to-do list with 4 things. Underneath that, I've got the actual backlog, all the stuff we've been asked to do that we haven't started yet. So this is where I, as the board admin, are going to advise the team, like just a heads up, as new stuff is added, it will drop into the backlog until you do this. So this allows the team to evaluate the work in Kanban. This is optional. You'll notice I now have 5 things here, but it's another way to help support. Oh. Is that the right one? Or whip it good. Is that one you're looking for? This is a sprint board or a Scrum board. Now, I know that because it says get started in the backlog. I don't have an active sprint. So I'm going to quickly just start one. Oh, wow, 2023. Let me... Oh, no, I pushed the wrong button. I will come back and talk more about how this works as we go, but I quickly just need to get this going for demonstration. I had turned it off foolishly last time. All right. When I see sprint or when I see this little like circle logo, that is a guarantee you're in a Scrum board. So this is on, think about this on the exam. If you're looking at a board and you can't tell what it is, look for complete sprint or look for sprint. If you're on a backlog, look for a complete sprint button or a create sprint button. Dawn, yes, we can configure the column names on the board. We will talk about that when we get hands-on with configuration. But yes, we can change all of these names to be anything we want. By default, they will match the status that is first put into them. However, you can rename them all. You're welcome, Justin. A quick shout out to Justin, JW, some other folks. They're all members of my YouTube channel. I'll put a link for more information there, but I really appreciate their support. They help make it possible for me to continue to provide all this great stuff. So another way you can support, including clicking that like button. So please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And while I'm thinking about it, I also have a Discord community and a WhatsApp community if folks are looking for additional support on this or any other topic in Atlassian. And you can find me over on LinkedIn. So please reach out for help. Please reach out for ideas and other things. There's plenty of people out there to help us. But these are our boards and the major differences. Again, about 18% of our exam will talk about this stuff. And that is the end of our first session. And we're going to jump right into session 2. Boop. Apparently, this is name of course. All right. So that was the concepts. Kanban versus Scrum. No sprints versus sprints, essentially. And also why we use boards. It's to help us manage our work. And as board admin, someone who can configure a board, we need to understand that so we can help people. Who is responsible for naming board columns? The board administrator. I haven't spoken too much about this, but the board administrator in a company managed space is an actual permission. And I'll show you that as we go. The board administrator in a team managed space is the space admin. So that's the split. And we're going to talk about permissions. So we'll talk about that shortly. And then we'll talk about filters. How does the board know what should go on it? Pop quiz, everyone. Maybe I'll put this in as a widget and then drink some water because I'm losing my voice. Can team managed spaces have multiple boards? Yes. No. Create. Start and show. So enter a 1 in chat if you think they can. Enter a 2 in chat if you think team managed spaces cannot have multiple boards. What do y'all think? The columns. Okay, false. I say false. Well, false isn't an answer. It's a 1 or a 2, team. Sorry. I'm using this feature. I use StreamYard just to put the polls up on screen. And it does require the 1 or the 2 or the 3 or the 4 in chat to know what you're voting. But definitely typing in things also works. So far, the no's have it. Any yays? Any folks think, we can have multiple boards in a team managed space? The answer is no, we cannot. The no's win. We'll talk more about the differences, this exam is mostly around company managed spaces. We do have to know that difference though. You know what, Justin? I'll fire my intern, okay? So we're transitioning out of concepts now into the permissions and filters. This is the single biggest section of the exam at 36%. And that tells us Atlassian thinks this is important, but also practically this is important. Most of the questions we will get as a board admin will be around why can't I do something in it and why can't I find my work? So understanding how the board gets stuff on it and how people access it is really important. Don't lie, Justin. No, you're not. So we're going to jump into this configuration. So we'll start with team managed, and I'll back up a bit because this is a new concept in cloud. A team managed space has much more local control. Now, contrasting that to a company managed space, more complexity. Company managed spaces require a Jira administrator to set up and maintain some things, and they also have a space administrator. So typically, we're using company managed spaces. They offer more complexity, more features to help manage things at scale. But there is this new thing called a team managed space that allows the space admin to control a lot of the stuff, including the board. The challenge, though, is because it's a simpler thing, you only get one board in a team managed space. I'll put a quick link about channel membership. I said I would do that. More about becoming a member. So you get up to one. And there's another restriction. The work items that show up in a team managed space can only be in that space. So this is where we need to understand this. There's probably questions on the exam about it, like the limitations or differences. Welcome if you're just joining me in Vertical. We're talking about the Jira board configuration exam offered by Atlassian. So team managed, the admin gets a lot more control. They can make their own work types and workflows and things and add fields. However, you only get one board. You can't make more. And you can only put work items from that space in them. It's also a setting. This might have changed. We will go and look at this soon. Atlassian has changed the features section quite a bit. But the space admin can turn the backlog on or off and can tinker with the board a bit. So keep in mind the space admin in a team managed space gets more control, more access than in a company managed space. I'm going to quickly pop over and we're just going to see what that looks like before I keep going. I have to go find a team managed space right now. More spaces, view all spaces, filter by app. All right, what I'm looking for, I want one of these, team managed. I'll open up employee onboarding, and here is my board in a team managed space. It looks a little bit different visually. One important thing to note, this plus will add a new column. This does not show up in a company managed space. So if I'm looking at a screen and I can't tell, and I see this right here at the board, team managed, guaranteed. If I go into space settings, I'm curious if it doesn't even exist anymore. Wow, the features menu is just entirely gone. So ignore that bit about features. We've got a board, and it's got these columns that I can use. Is it hiding here? No. Fine. So we're stuck with a single board, and I can only show work from the employee onboarding space in here. So that's the team managed space. In a company managed space, though, I get more bells and whistles, more features. It's intended for broader scale. Now, there's a permission that allows you to make boards. So if you don't see this plus when you're in your space, you're lacking the permission to make a new board. But from here, you can make a Scrum or a Kanban board, and you can have almost as many as you want. I don't know what the upper limit is. Typically, having more than a few is probably not the best idea, but we can add more boards. In a company managed space, we'll then give it a name, and then we'll tell Jira what work should show up in the board. It doesn't only have to be from that one space. You might say, hey, there's a team I have set up, grab their work. There's a label I want. There's a specific filter in Jira Query Language or JQuil that helps you figure that out. So when we set up this company managed board, we have to tell Jira what work gets pulled in. This gives us some interesting options. We do not have to represent all the work in one space in one board. We might just say, only show me a subset of work in this board, or show me all of it. Now, there's also a permission on the board where we can have board administrators. So in a in a team managed space, these space administrators are the board administrators. In a company managed space, though, these can be different people. And this is really powerful. In some bigger, more important spaces, you may not want everyone to have board administration powers, or maybe you want to delegate it. I'm the admin for a space, and I want JW and Justin and Mr. Jean-Baptiste to be board admins so they can manage these boards on their own. And maybe they each only get to manage their own board. We can do that in a company managed space. So this is the permission you need. Typically, space admins are board admins, but not always. But a space admin should be able to get this for you if you need it. And this is just contrasting that again, the team managed space, you have to be the admin of the whole space. So this is another consideration practically. If you're a space admin in a team managed space, you can do things like change the workflow. You can do things like add work types. Maybe you don't want someone to be able to do that. You only want them to be able to manage the board. A company managed space is probably better. Curious who uses team managed spaces. Team managed spaces are relatively new, but curious if anyone is actively using them. All right. So I'm going to jump over to a company managed space now. This is our team managed space. To allow someone else to edit this, in team managed, I would go into space settings. I'd go to access, and I would give someone else this administrator role. So I can see Alana can do this, as well as anyone in the site admins group. JW uses them personally. That's a really good use case. Justin does not use them. People set them up for short-term contractor teams or short-term projects. I like that use case because it's targeted and it's specific. There's other implications to using team managed spaces that can make it harder to administer overall. But for short-term things with very limited scope, we're only using it for these few things, they can be a very good option. Okay, so we're going to pop over to a company managed space, my mobile dev. I know it's company managed because it says company managed down here, but also I can see more than one board. This tells me right away, company managed space. Something like that can show up on the exam. If I click on these three dots for these boards, there's a board setting. And right here is everyone who can manage this board. So again, this is very powerful. I was a space admin in some spaces in my professional career, and I was a board admin in a lot of boards because people wanted me to configure stuff. If you're the board admin, you can see this screen and you can do all the configuration on the board. So that's the permission around the board. You have to be a board administrator. Typically, space admins are the board admin, and whoever makes the board is automatically the admin. Now, to make a new board, I just open up the space and look for this plus. I can only do this in a company managed space, and I'll pick Scrum or Kanban. Maybe I'll make a new Scrum board. I'll give it some kind of name. I'll call this the 905 Scrum board. And then I get to pick what's in it. I might say all the work types, a specific label, or I can use JQuil, a JQL filter that pulls in work. And any work I have visibility to, I can pull in. So maybe I'll pull in the entire MOBL board of information, or maybe you have a filter that pulls in all, the same work type from multiple spaces. So this is where it's important to understand what the team wants to do. I'd want to go to people's team and say, hey, what work do you need to be managing on this board? Okay, it's across different spaces. I need a JQL filter to help me find that. Something like that can also show up on the exam, right? You don't just pull in work from one space. You can pull in a different selection of work based on your filter. And this filter will come back. So I'll create this. Now I've got my 905 Scrum board. If I go into these settings, I'm going to see I'm the only administrator. So depending on my use case, I might want to add more people. I go out of the office. I have a senior developer who I want to back me up. I can add them and they'll get access to go edit this. Also an important thing right here, and we'll have some slides to talk about this in a moment, is the filter that is driving the board. So this filter is defining what shows up. This is really important because if someone doesn't have access to these work items, Or if someone doesn't have access to that filter, they may not see work items on the board. I can almost guarantee a question about that's going to show up on the exam. Why can't someone see work on a board? Is the filter shared? If it's not, they might not see anything. So this is creating a board and the major differences. All right. Here's a leading question. How do you disable ranking on a board? How do you disable the ability to rank work items on a board? And by ranking work items, I mean if you go to a board and you're looking at the board, I can put this one above that one, or I can put this one below that one. Typically, groups do this to show priority. I intend to work on this one first, then on this one, then on that one. So you can reorder it. How do I turn that off? How do I force someone not to be able to do that? And while you answer that, I'm going to take a quick sip of tea because I can't talk very much right now. Stomping, apparently. And just a quick shout out, I do have that ACA-905 course available up there in the QR code, and I'll put it down in the chat. How did I know Anne would get it? Anne, nobody look at Anne's answer. Yeah, you can turn this feature off. By default, it is on, and it's very useful. Most groups, most of the time, are going to be using this particular feature. Because it's very useful. Like people want to be able to organize their board and say, this one's more important than that one, or we'll do that one next. And there's a link to the course bundle. Again, you'll get both courses. So it's like 5 hours of video on 2 courses. There's only one exam voucher in there though, because the 910 was retired, but you'll get that for cheaper than just the exam voucher. So board filters, again, show up on our company managed boards. There is a default filter technically on the team managed space, but it's just the whole project. So space equals whatever the name of the project is, or the space, excuse me. In this company managed board though, we can go in and tinker with the filter. By default, it might be everything in the space. However, we might go in and change it later. And that's good and bad. It means the things on the board will change, but it's also good because we might realize, hey, we got to change this because we have to support our team in a different way. Or maybe we realized, whoops, we left out a whole bunch of work and we should not have done that. I put this in bold. Please remember this. If you forget everything else I am talking about today, if you aren't paying attention at all, please pay attention for this one bullet point. If you can't see the filter, you can't use the board. Period, full stop. So this is just something we have to know about access. In order to see something on a board, you first have to be able to see the work item itself. So if the work item's in a space you don't have permissions to see, you won't see it. The next thing you have to have is access to the underlying filter. So if I'm using a filter to power the board and I don't share view access with anyone, people will come to the board and it will be blank. Very frustrating. Practically, that does happen. People forget, or someone changes the permissions on the underlying filter. When you're editing the filter, you have no way of knowing what boards it's being used on. So this is why I'm always very, very careful when I'm using filters and very, very careful when I'm tweaking filters, because someone, may accidentally hide it. I'm going to put a quick poll and just see, has anyone tripped over this? Who has run into this problem? The board is blank. Someone didn't share a filter. Me. Also me. Not yet. Justin, I hope this question meets your quality standards. I joke with Justin. He's in here a lot. We're friends. He also rags on me a lot. But curious if you've run into this problem. A filter wasn't shared, and now no one can see the board. Very common because it's very easy not to share a filter. I will show you how to not share a filter, and then I'll show you how to fix the problem. But the filter defines what shows up on the board itself. So it's very, very important. You can think of the filter as the list of work items for the board. You can change it, and you can also break it. Now, in a company managed space, you can include work items from multiple spaces. So all you have to do is build that filter. It could be in JQL. It could be in a basic filter. Doesn't matter, where you can share it. It's an undocumented feature, Georgia is saying. I don't know about the feature part, as it's certainly something the system can do. Okay, good. Some other people have tripped over it. It was one of the first mistakes I made when I set up a board, just because I forgot to share the filter. Happens to everybody. I don't think I can respond to my own polls, but I really should. But we can include multiple spaces. Now, keep in mind, you have to have view permission to work items in the space to see it. So it is possible you set up a filter that includes multiple spaces, you share the filter appropriately, and people don't see some of those work items. That could be because they can't see the MOBL project or something else. Georgia has a very good point. There's a legitimate case where maybe not everyone should see the board. Now, you can use this to suppress access. Keep in mind, though, the filter itself isn't security. So I would never do this to hide a confidential ticket, because if someone has permission to see the ticket, they can see it, even if they can't see the filter. So be careful with this. It's not a security feature. It's a whoops, I forgot to share it mistake. But there is a possible use case where on your team, you don't want everyone to be working on a board. So you just make it blank for half the team by sharing it appropriately. In my experience, practically, I've never done that. I just make sure the whole team can see everything on the board. Okay, good. I'm feeling better now. Most of us have made this particular mistake. So also keep in mind, you can go halfway. You can share the filter properly, but someone on the team, maybe Georgia, doesn't have access to see one of the spaces, or maybe Tony can't see the other space. So anytime someone complains, hey, Rob, I can't see something on the board, my first question is, okay, what do you think you're missing? And then I can compare their access to someone else's. Christy also has this problem because you get to clean it up. Yes. If you're in here with me, there's about 30 folks. You probably are the person who's doing most of this work. Now, I had that question about filter ranking. There's something in JQL in a query called the order by clause. If this is in the filter, it will allow you to stack rank. If the filter does not have this order by clause, and Anne nailed it right here, you cannot stack rank work items in the board just because this is necessary. I will show you a quick way to turn it on or turn it off. The nice people at Atlassian have put in a button you push, and that just turns it on. It fixes the filter for you. People's got a great point. This does not show up on the exam multiple sprints across different spaces. But if you're pulling in work items from multiple spaces on one board, you might have some challenges when you're deleting or archiving. Curious people, can you share some of the hiccups you've had? Could you share some of those challenges and how you solve them? And I'm asking you specifically to help share this, to just practice the skill of sharing what we know, right? Like, it's amazing we can point out the problems, but can you also help other people avoid the mistake? And I'll see if I can talk to them too as we go. But you can turn off stack ranking. In some cases, you may want to do this. Practically, I have never done this. I've made a mistake and forgotten, but I've never had a team say, you know what, we don't want to stack rank. Usually, it accidentally breaks because someone changes the filter, and then we have problems. Dawn has a great question. Does this course cover how to use query code to make filters? No. The 905, the Jira board configuration certification, kind of assumes you know a bit about searching. I will go in and show you how to use the basic search. This will make the query so you can save it. I also have on my site, I call it a mini certification. I'll dig it up. If you're looking to learn JQL, this course will give you everything you need to know. I'll pop that in the chat, but this course is free. It's a mini certification, 15 minutes that will give you all the basics of JQL. I'll put both in the chat if you want them. You'll also get a badge you can put on LinkedIn, just if you want that. So this is the free JQL certification. And this is one that I made up. This is not an official Atlassian certification, just to be clear. And this is a full-length course, full-length JQL course. Again, the free JQL is helpful. You'll understand the concepts of filtering because practically you might know how to set up the board, but if you don't have the filter to drive it, that can be a bit challenging. You may see some JQL related questions on the exam. It's going to be more around, did you share the filter? And is there an order by clause in the filter itself to make it work? I think I've got Yep, one more slide, and then I'll show you what this looks like too. JW, I've got the course on my site. It's linked right below. But Don, I'll show you some basics of this right after this. Now, there is something called a subfilter. If you're talking about subfilters, you are only talking about Kanban boards. Subfilters do not exist on Scrum boards because the subfilter is used to remove work items from the board. When we think of Scrum, at the end of a sprint, all the work items vanish and go to a different board or they're completed. But in Kanban, we might have a column at the end that's just called completed. Or maybe we have work items we don't want to show because they've been released. Or maybe they don't have a version. We don't want to look at them yet. The subfilter allows us to fine tune the board. There is a default subfilter that will show up, fixed version at unreleased versions or fixed version is empty. Basically, that's saying like, hey, if there's no version on this thing, don't show it. But if you've got a version, we're probably working on it, so show it. Practically, this can show up from time to time. It's used to help control just what work shows up on a Kanban board because there is no function to get rid of them when you complete them necessarily. But just keep in mind, subfilter is Kanban, not Scrum. Okay, water for Rob. I'm going to talk a bit about filters, and then we're going to jump in to a quick break. I'm going to run and get some more water, and then we'll keep on going with the second bit of this. Here I am in my Scrum board. I'm just going to edit this board. And if I scroll down, I've got the board filter. In our next few sections, we'll talk about the rest of this config, but the board filter is, again, how the board knows what to display. Very important. What I'm seeing here is the actual query the board is using. And I can click on this edit filter query. And here is the filter. So I'm going to click on JQL. And here is the JQL code. I pronounce JQL as JQL. So if you see that word anywhere, I'm talking about JQL. This is the JQL that is feeding the board. It's just saying if it's in this project MOBL, order by the rank, and then feed it to the board. I don't have to know JQL to make filters, though. I'm going to make a brand new filter. I'm going to delete all this. I'm going to click on Basic. And instead of just MOBL, I'll say type does not equal. I don't want bugs to show up on this board that I'm building for the team. They've told me no bugs, just other stuff. Great. I'll run this. And now I'll see a list of work items that don't include bugs. So I've built the filter here. So you can use the basic search or the basic filter. You'll notice if I click on JQL, though, it now lists bug, type does not equal bug. So this is one way we can do it. From here, I just click save. Save as a copy. Please always save as a copy. If I overwrite filter for MOBL board, this will change other filters that happen to use this, or other boards that happen to use this filter. So you might accidentally break someone's board. I almost always save a copy unless I know where it's being used. I'll call this like MOBL non-bug tickets. And then right here is where most people make the mistake. If you make a brand new filter, this will say private, and this will say private. Only I can see it right now. This is bad. If I use this and someone else looks at the board, they'll see nothing. So I'll click on viewers, and maybe I'll share it with the whole space. If you have access to my mobile space, and I say all roles, I'll click add. Now I see everyone in this space can see it. You have to select it here, and you have to click add. If you just do this, like if I just go space, mobile dev, and click save, it won't save it. So click add, then click save. Now this filter is available for use on the board. I've shared it with the people who should use it, and I can come back and change it. Maybe the team says, oh, hey, Rob, we meant bugs, but can you also get rid of epics? We don't want to see those. Sure, I can come back to this filter, and I can get to that filter, again, from the board configuration. You'll notice it hasn't changed yet, but I can come back to this filter and make any modification. So now I've got a new filter, and hopefully, Dawn, this helped get to your question. Like, I don't have to know JQL to do this. It is a very powerful and useful tool, though. So definitely check those links to the free short course or the longer form if you're looking to get really in depth. But knowing JQL is just a good skill, period, full stop, if you're using Jira. You don't have to have it, though. You can use the basic. And the course I have also covers the basic because it's just clicking these drop downs. I can make modifications as long as I save the filter. Great. I'm going to just grab the name of this filter, go back to my board, and now I have this select filter. I can go find, where'd it go? Wherever it is. So I'll just type in the name, and now you'll see that this JQL is updated. It's now showing the new filter. This is a good sanity check because this will show you the name of the filter, but also what the filter is doing. This is why it's important to know JQL, so you can kind of read this, but you can always click on Edit Filter Query, and it'll take you to this, so you can look at it and go, what's in there? I'm going to open filter details. This also tells you who can see the filter. This is really neat. This is new-ish in the past year or two, but this is telling me, hey, if you're in the mobile dev space, you might have permissions. I'll click View Permissions, and it's going to show me the permissions in the space. So this will help me figure out who can see it. And at the bottom, I can see who has access to the filter. So if someone is complaining to me, if JW comes up and says, hey, man, I can't see, there's nothing on this board, I might go, oh, whoops, you're not in the space mobile dev. I can just click Edit Permissions right from here and make my fix. I'll add another space, Core Experience, and I'll click Add and click Save. And now those people also have access. So that's how to quickly fix that. You don't even have to go to the filter. They've added this little bit on Edit Permissions, so you can do it here. The last thing to show is this work item ranking. Now, if we look at this JQL, the last bit, just like Anne called out, thank you, Anne, says order by rank ascending. I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to then run the filter. I'm going to save the filter. Save changes. Again, I typically don't save changes. I'll make a new one. But now I'll go back to my board, and I will not be able to click and drag. So I can move it left to right, but I can't put this one at the bottom. It just won't let me. So if people are complaining, hey, I can't move tickets in the board up and down. Oh, ranking's disabled. There might be a good reason for that. Or maybe you just made a whoopsie. To fix it, I just go back into my board settings. The fastest way to fix it is board settings and just click this button. It'll just fix the filter for you. You could also open the filter and add order by rank ASC at the end and save it, but I'm super lazy, so I'll just push this button. It's going to tell you what it's going to do. Keep in mind that changes the filter. So if other boards are using that filter, they will also be updated. Also, if someone else is using that filter for some other purpose, it will also be updated. So this is where, at bigger scale, it can be challenging to keep track of all the changes and what they impact. So just be aware as you change the filter, anyone else using that filter will see a change. Something like that could show up on the exam. But now if I go back to the board, I can reorder these. I can put 50 at the bottom and 48 at the top. So that's how to fix the order by challenge. Something like that probably appears on your exam. All right, folks, we are going to take a quick break. I'm going to put a banner up. What should the banner say? Check out the course I've got. Sure. It includes a voucher. So if you're looking to earn this certification, the QR code at the top will take you to this bundle. It includes 2 courses, the ACA-910 for Jira Service Management and the 905. The 905 will include the voucher. You get both for $45. This is another way to support me, but it's also great learning. Even if you don't want the exam, I've got a version of the course for, I think, $8 you can get to get more knowledge. Just knowing how to do this is important. I will keep offering free stuff. Please don't worry. But this is another resource we've got. All roads lead to Tatooine. Yes. Check out the course here. All right, folks, I'm going to take about 2 minutes. I'm going to run and grab some more water and some more tea. Please take a minute to stretch, grab a notepad, write down what you're learning, and drop your questions in the chat. I will be right back. We're taking a short break. Back in 3 to 4 minutes, maybe. All right. Be right back. See you soon. Remember to hit the like button, too. I got to say that because I'm on YouTube. All right. We need some music. Do 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 do. Hey, that was exactly 3 minutes. Look at that. Do 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 do. All right, folks. Let's see. Where are we now? Nope, wrong way. Our next session is not the 5th. Our next session is right now. All right. Give folks a minute to come on back. And we are going to keep rolling. I will stop singing whatever that song was. All right. So that was the permissions and the filter. Again, the two biggest parts of the exam, understanding who can see the board, and then trying to figure out why maybe someone can't see the board because we forgot to share the filter. I can almost guarantee you're going to be asked about that if you sit the exam. So we're going to keep on trucking. And now we'll dig into columns in swim lanes. Someone asked earlier, how do we change the columns? This is where we're going to cover that. In my experience, I'm typically like updating the columns when I make the board, and then I rarely come back to them. You can always come back and change the column setup though. Excuse me. And I'll skip ahead. And this is about 1/5 of the exam. So we can expect 20% of the questions out of 30 questions. That's going to be what? 6 are going to relate to columns in swim lanes. JW is saying it is on the exam. All right. So we should know about that. I'm curious if folks customize your columns. Do you customize your columns? The default will give you 1 column per status. That's not bad. That can be very useful, but do you take time to customize them beyond that? And no is a totally okay answer. You can always do that. What am I looking for here? So I mentioned Kanban can have a backlog. It does exist. It shows up in team managed spaces. Data K, this is probably the best answer. It depends. Almost like you could answer almost every question that way. Like, when should we do blank? Why would I do that? And I laugh because like, this is true. As admins, as people configuring a system, we are not order takers. Like, we should never be okay with, I'll pick on Dawn coming to me, Rob, make me a new board like this. I should go, okay, I understand what you want. Help me understand why you want that. What problem is this going to solve for your team? How will it improve how you operate? Like all that stuff. Because like, we bring knowledge and expertise. We know how to set up a Jira board. The team telling us we want X, Y, and Z doesn't. They know how they want to work, and maybe they don't realize there's different features or things. So it depends is always a good answer. JW got confused. All right, I'll see if I can help you out. And Dawn does customize columns. Amazing. I always recommend like the default that we'll see is just columns, but it's always a good idea to talk to the team using it. Sometimes, they want different names on the columns. You can do that. Sometimes they want to map statuses differently. You can do that. Sometimes they don't want a Kanban backlog, but there is one. So we'll go take a look at this. Georgia also manages them. Now, I briefly touched on this, but in a team managed space, you can just go to the board and change the names of the columns. You can delete the columns. You can add more columns, do whatever you want, basically. This is easy in a team managed space. And again, if you see this plus at the end of a board, you're almost guaranteed to be in one. Christy is pointing out there is a delay. Yes, this drives me insane on YouTube. I use YouTube because it gives me a single place to put all of my content, and it makes it searchable and findable. I am also looking into, though, like Zoom study sessions and things. So I'll put another pull up. I'll leave it up longer. Would Zoom study sessions be useful? Yes. No. Maybe. I also find this annoying as the person running the session because when you ask a question, it takes me 3 minutes to see it. Um, yeah, this is very common. I see it too. It drives me bonkers because I don't get to see it. And it does result in me answering questions out of time. I need to stop that poll. I don't want to show that one. I want to show this one. There we go. So if folks want Zoom study sessions, let me know, and I can certainly start adding them in. I just got to figure out how to make sure people know they exist. All right. So again, team managed space, very easy to adjust columns. You just open the board. You have to be a space admin and change it. You just add the columns or delete them or whatever. No. Sorry. Now in team managed spaces, the default columns are all statuses. And so, as a team managed space admin, you can go make your own workflow and add your own columns. So in a team managed space, you have a lot more control. The thing to keep in mind is it defaults to a global transition. So it means every status can move to every other status. You can change that as a team managed space admin. But if you want a new column, you have to add a new status. So we'll go see what this looks like as we go. You can rename it though. So I don't have to have a column called in progress. I could call this like the team is working on it or something else that makes sense for the team. People, this is the main use case. Your team may have a lot of statuses that fall into the in progress general bucket. And it can be advantageous to group them all visually when you're looking at it instead of having them have so many columns. They kind of lose what's going on, if that makes sense. Excuse me. Now you can remap statuses. This is done under board settings. So when you first add the column, it'll be connected to a status, or when you first add a status, and we'll go see this, but you can then tell it, hey, in the test column, show 2 different statuses could be represented. We can also do this on company managed. And this helps, again, get around the problem. I don't want to have 6 columns. I only want 5. I can combine some into one column. Definitely talk to the team you're supporting if you do this, just so they know what's going on and they understand like what it means. It can also be visually confusing when people move work items because they may not realize they're putting it into pending. They may have assumed it's being put into the test stage. I'm going to swap over very quickly and just show you this so we can see it. This is my team managed space. I know right away it's team managed because of this plus. Also, if I click on the 3 dots, it says team managed. But here I can add a new column. Now you'll notice it popped up with a screen that says create status. It did not pop up with a screen saying make a new column. That's because the default here is 1 column to 1 status. As a team managed space admin, I can also go manage the space under space settings, open up work types. I'll pick on task just to pick one, and then click edit workflow. And if I add a new status here, we'll call this Rob's status. It's a in progress status category, and I'll add it. And I need a transition, so I'll say Rob's status can go to done. I'll give it a name. It's done. And maybe it can go from in progress to Rob's status to done. Rob's status. There we go. Why are you yelling at me? What do you need? What's the warning? Oh, multiples. Okay, fine. A bit outside the scope of this, but I made a whoopsie and named this the same thing. Rob's done. There we go. These are terrible names of transitions, by the way. I'm just quickly slamming this in to give us something to talk about. Tony is asking, can we make a calculated field? Do you mean on the board? Could you clarify that a little, my friend? So I've got this new status called Rob status. I'm going to go back to this particular space. I'll close this out. I'll go back to my board. You'll notice there's now a column called Rob status. So this is the default behavior in a team managed space. If you make a new status, you automatically get a new board column. And you can also make a new status right from here. New status. So this is just a behavior of the team managed space. In a company managed space, it's a lot harder to go make a new status. You have to get a Jira admin. So please keep that in mind. However, maybe I don't want all these columns. I've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns right now. Maybe I want to change this. I can click on these three dots, configure columns, and now I can do things like hide them. Maybe I don't want new status to be shown at all. If you do this, work items will disappear. This is because a ticket can move through the workflow outside of the board. So someone could legitimately be working on a ticket in progress, move it to new status, and it will not show up on the board. This is another common mistake people make. This is potentially a question you might run into on the exam, wink, that you should be aware of. If you hide the status on the board, work items disappear from the board. You'll notice I have this column though. It must have at least one status in it. So I can just remove the column. I could also, instead of hiding the status, put it under in progress. And maybe I'll put Rob status under there too, because that's all an in progress thing. The team knows they're working on something. And now I'll clean up my columns. And it's kind of silly that Dunn's over here, so I'm going to move it over there. So on a team managed space, it's very easy for me to manipulate the columns. Tony, I think our next section of this will talk about the fields we can see on a ticket. So hopefully I can answer it there. If I don't though, please bug me and I'll see what I can do for you. Also, a quick shout out to my Discord and WhatsApp communities. You can always find me in there. There's also like almost 400 people in Discord at this point sharing knowledge. And also find me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to help, keep finding information and sharing stuff with you. So this is the team managed space. Once I publish this, you'll notice those columns all changed. Now, though, if I grab something from to do, I get, actually, this is a fun question. Who can tell me why Rob's status isn't showing up? And I understand there's a delay in chat, so I'll give folks a couple moments. But if I grab a work item from to do, you'll notice I have options under in progress. Please make sure your team knows about this, because many people will just drop it on the first thing they see, and they don't mean to put it in progress. They meant maybe to new status or something else. So if you have multiple statuses in a column, and this is true in company and in team managed spaces, make sure your team is aware of where they should put things appropriately. Many folks just get in the habit of flinging it left to right, and they might drop it in the wrong place. But a question, why does Rob's status not show up? Like, it's there. If I open up this work item and I click on the status and I click on view workflow, Rob's status is right here. I have a status called Rob's status. It's not on my board. Why not? This is a practical question, actually. People will come and complain to you about this exact problem. Who knows why? And I will drink some tea while you ponder this mystery of the universe. JW is thinking permissions. Possibly. Not in this case. It's not working because of something I did that you all saw me do. A question from Data K. Can we reorder new status and in progress? We should be able to. So the question is, I grab a ticket. In progress happens to be on top in this example. Could I swap them? I'm going to go into my board config or my configure columns. And here's the order. I'm just going to put in progress. Can I not do it? At the bottom. So I had to bounce it out of the column and back in. I'll publish this. Nope. I'm curious if it's doing it alphabetically. I'm going to do this. What I'm doing is making a status called ABC, and I'm putting it in the same column, because what I'm seeing is in progress before new, I is before N. I'll get rid of this. I'll publish. What I think will happen is the ABC status is now at the top. Yep. So the list of statuses just appears to be alphabetical by first letter. Now, the reason Rob's status doesn't show up is because there is no transition between to do and Rob's status. So if I go back here, and this is why knowing this workflow is really important, I make a ticket and it goes into to do. And then it's saying this little black box says any status can move into it. So from to do, I could go to in progress, in review, done, new status, or ABC. Rob's status, however, can only be transitioned from in progress. So this is a very common thing. You need to understand the workflow to troubleshoot these challenges. You can always find the workflow by opening a ticket, clicking on the ticket, and saying view workflow. Keep in mind the work type will can change the workflow. So as you're troubleshooting, ask the person which specific ticket do you have trouble with. So I'm going to see if I can do this. I'll grab this in progress one. I'll go to transition 2, and now I see, come back. Now I see Rob's status at the bottom. So that's why it missed, or that's why it's missing. All right, I'll get rid of that Zoom poll because it's been up for a bit. Let's stop the poll and hide the poll. We'll go back to comments. Christy, I haven't put the status in a column. That is another thing that could be true. If I configure these columns and I put Rob's status in hidden statuses, that's actually going to hide the work items that are in Rob's status. So I'll take this marketing example. Let's say I'm working on this and I'm just doing my job. It's in progress. And then I move it to Rob's status. So this is EO1, the ticket EO1. I could work on the ticket from here, but EO1 is now missing. It vanished from the board. So this is another very common challenge people run into. You have a status that is not mapped to the board. That ticket will disappear. That ticket still exists. If I go and remap these columns under configure columns, and I put Rob's status back under in progress, we're going to see ticket EO1 show up right here. Welcome, Rodney. For folks who don't know the Jira guy, he's one of the folks who inspired me to become a Atlassian instructor and to do all this live training stuff. He also knows a heck of a lot more about Jira than I do. So I'm always excited and thrilled when he's here. And he's one of my channel moderators. So it's good to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. We were just talking about team managed spaces and board configuration. So again, team managed space admins are the board admin. They can make new columns whenever they want. They can configure them by clicking the gear, and they can add new statuses as they need to. This is different than a company managed space. You have to be a board admin to manage the boards. How do we get to column configuration in a company board? You read my mind, Don. I'm going to show you. It's under board settings. So I'll show you this visually in a moment. And then there's a layout tab for columns. Now, the last column should be done, but you can then map statuses to each of these columns. So it's very similar to the team managed space, but it's visually going to look different. And we also then have the work in progress limits up at the top. We haven't spoken too much about those, but I'll show you them. These are also called restraints, but I might say my in progress column should have at least 3, but no more than 5 work items. All this does is visually change the column color. If I exceed the maximum, it's red. If I'm under the minimum, it's yellow. Otherwise, the concept of mapping columns is very similar. I can just click and drag statuses to the column they should appear in. So in this example, my in progress column is comprised of in progress, testing, and architecture review. This is the same idea as the team managed space, right? I'm just dragging the status I want. The difference is I cannot make new statuses from here. So the board administrator permission does not let me make new statuses in the company managed space. If I happen to be a Jira admin, I could go modify the workflow. That's a bit excessive. Usually we don't want to go change the workflow to add new statuses unless we really know that we should. Now in a company managed Kanban board, we typically want the last column to be done, and it should, I think, force us to do that. And we also can't put constraints on the backlog. So just keep that in the back of your mind. The constraint is intended to help us manage the workflow. So this makes sense, right? As we're working, we want to say only 3 items in progress, no more, to focus us. But the backlog should be as big as we need because it's everything we haven't committed to yet. So you cannot constrain a backlog in Kanban, but you can restrain the columns. And many groups that use Kanban do this just to provide a visual reference to what's going on. In a company managed Scrum board, you can add constraints, excuse me. Most groups I work with in Scrum don't do this. This is where you could get into what's called Scrumban, which is a combination of Scrum and Kanban. Or you might just use it to visually call out, hey, Rodney, I think you've taken on too much work. You said 10 things are in progress. Are you really working on 10 things all at once? I don't think you are. I'm going to go away. Stop it, FaceTime. You can also have these set a resolution. So it's just an optional thing. If you check the box when it hits that column, it can set a resolution on the ticket. It's all some form of water fragile, says Rodney. Kind of. Just some possible things you want to be on the lookout for. I've mentioned this a couple times. Putting multiple statuses into one column can be frustrating. People might drop it on the wrong spot. So make sure if you do this, your team is aware and they know how to like undo it. This can also cause problems if your workflow doesn't allow specific transitions. In this example, I might drag a work item from to do into test, but maybe I can't go backwards from test back to do. So please keep this in mind when you're configuring the board. You can accidentally end up with work items in statuses they can't get out of. The next thing you want to be careful of that I've mentioned is unassigning a status or unmapping a status from a column. The work will vanish. This can be really frustrating because folks expect it to be there and it's not. It can be frustrating because they can see the work if they go query it, and it's not on the board. So if someone's complaining work isn't on a board, this is the first thing I check. Which exact ticket is it? And oh, we've unmapped that status from the board for some reason. The other thing to be aware of, you can change the column names to whatever you want. Make sure they make sense. If they don't match the underlying statuses, people can easily get confused, especially if they're new to your team and unfamiliar with how you work. So I always do some kind of basic orientation when someone joins a team. I show them the board and I explain what should go in there. And I make sure it's documented. So when they look at it, they can get help and they know what they're doing. But these are three, common gotcha, common whoopsies, common things that might show up on the exam in terms of making the board usable. FaceTime really wants my attention. We're going to pop back over to Jira and go to our mobile dev, and we're going to open up our Kanban board. And again, to edit this, it's under board settings. And this, Dawn, is where we configure them. So board settings, under layout and columns. So this is all the settings I have in the Kanban board for it. Here I have the constraints or restraints, excuse me. I can say issue count, don't include subtasks, or issue count, include subtasks. I can then say, where do I want the epics to be displayed? Typically, I like them as an epic panel because I don't want the epic to be tracking work. This is up to each team and what you use epics for, though. So please keep that in mind. And then this is how I turn on the Kanban backlog. I just map a status to this. So in this case, I've told Jira, if anything's in the to-do status, put it in the backlog. Once it gets into testing, put it into the to-do column. This is probably dumb. Like, this is probably a bad idea because someone will see the to-do column, but really the items in there are in the testing status. So typically in a Kanban space, you might end up with a few to-do statuses, like a backlog status and then a queued up for work or something. And so you'll map the backlog status here and the other one here. Christy, can we set constraints per assignee? We cannot. The constraint is on the board. So we'll see some examples of what this looks like, and I'll throw some in right now. Let's say minimum 1, maximum 2. This is not telling Jira for Rob, it's 1 and 2, and for Christy, it's 3 and 4. It's saying what's shown in this column, minimum 1, maximum 2. So I'll put this constraint in there, and we'll see what happens. For giggles, it won't let us have the minimum over the max, which is always fun to think. 1. Rodney, yeah. I misread this as fun fact at first, my friend. This is a common challenge in Jira. The status of something is where it sits in your workflow. It's not why you close the ticket. For example, on this board, I have one status that is done. The status name is done. Like, I'm done with the work. But it might have ended up there for multiple reasons. Maybe I completed the work. Maybe we canceled it. Maybe it's a duplicate. The resolution is why it was completed. The status is just that it was completed. People conflate that. They get that mixed up. So having this little set resolution is a great step because you can have a status of something and you don't want to resolve the ticket. It's still open, or vice versa. Dawn doesn't have the epic work items on your board. Do you mean this right here? Or do you mean you don't see epics on the board itself? As you're going, I'm going to just change to another board all of these things should be just saved as you type them in. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to a Scrum board, and I'm going to open up the board settings and open my layout and my columns. I'm betting you're on a Scrum board, because you'll notice this Scrum board doesn't have the epics listed here. Aha. I love that misspelling. I need to make that a thing. I'm immediately thinking Star Trek and banning Khan. Anyone get that joke? Any Trekkies in the room, please? To Rodney's point, when I look at the board, what is it here? I know I'm in the wrong board. Sorry, I got to go to my Kanban board. There is... I turned it off, didn't I? Board settings, layout, columns. Display them in a panel on the backlog. There it is, epic panel. So this is what that option turns on. This thing on the side. I watched Star Trek before I used Khan Academy, Dawn, but I definitely like the Khan. Justin, can you drop this in our Discord somewhere so I remember it, please? Kanban, Khanban, and links to the Discord for other hot takes on random nonsense. Thank you for that, Dawn. That made my day. But yeah, if you don't see that option under board configuration, you're in a Scrum board, because only Kanban boards support that. And again, that's under columns. I've got the issue constraints. I'm going to go back to the board and look at the board, and I'll see I've got 9 in here. It's yelling at me. I'm going to put on a swim lane, though. I'm going to go by assignee, and you'll notice it's still red. 4, but it's even red here. So even though I'm viewing the swim lanes by assignee, it's not telling Jira, is Cassie over their limit? It's saying, is the column over the limit? It's totaling all the groups. And this is important because this means we have as a team have said we should only be focusing on 1 or 2 things at a time. Maybe we should adjust this. Maybe the minimum should be 1 per team member, something like that. We can put in limits on Scrum. So I'm going to go to my Scrum board, layout, columns. By default, it is turned off. So you'll have to click this drop down and pick the constraint, but now I can have it. But by default, it's off because stereotypically I'm not using constraints in Scrum. All right. Let's see. I'm going to just put a question. Do you use swim lanes? Put a nice poll. Leave it up for a couple minutes. Do you use swim lanes? Wow, swim lanes. Yes. Double yes. No. I can't swim. I think I made this joke the last time I did this training. But do you use swim lanes? Again, respond in chat with a 1, 2, 3, or 4. I'm going to drink some tea. And just as a reminder, please hit the like button if you're liking this. Just help other people find it. Easiest way to support me. You can also check out the QR code up top for a deal on my bundle of multiple ACAs that are retiring. That includes an exam voucher for the 905 if you want to take it. I also have a separate one just for 905 at $30, I think. Oh, wow. We've only got 1 double yes so far. And of course, I misspelled swim. Rodney uses drown lanes. I'm not going to ask what those are, my friend. Okay. Swim lanes are the rows of a board. My favorite single swim lane was by assignee. I would be running like a stand-up, and I would just move it by assignee so I could see everyone's work by who's doing it. And this let me quickly tear down. Sorry, it's trash day, so it's very loud. It let me quickly tear down what's going on and by each person. So I could quickly pull up, oh, what's Rob up to? What's Justin up to? And easily see it vertically or horizontally. There are other swim lanes, though, we can put together. There's some default ones, but we can also make our own. Now, keep in mind, the term you'll see on the screen is group. So when you hear, I want a swim lane on my board, that's the group menu. I don't know why they call them two different things, but they do. In a team managed space, there are 4 options, and that's what you're stuck with. None, assignee, epic, subtask. So please keep that in mind. You do get them on team managed, but because it's team managed, we have less control, less options, and we're just stuck with what the nice people at Atlassian have decided to give us. And if you're joining us on the vertical stream, welcome. We're talking about the ACA-905 certification offered by Jira on board configuration. Now, in a company managed space, you have more options. We can do it by story, and we can always make our own. We can use the queries option to configure a special one just for our team. The queries allow us to assign them based on JQL. So in this example, I have built some based around priority. Low priority, one just called priority, which is dumb, and everything else. I think this was supposed to be high priority, but I named the swim lane priority, which was bad. And they apply it top down. So when you go build one, I'll show this to you, but you can have your own swim lanes based on how your team works. This is entirely dependent on how your team works. So again, as a reminder, as admins, our job is to understand what the team is trying to do so we can configure the system to best support them. So make time to sit down and talk with them, have them show you what they want to do and why, but then you can give them custom swim lanes. Now, there are some options we have in the board config for company managed boards. For example, for assignee, we can have the unassigned work items show at the top or the bottom. I typically keep it at the bottom because when I'm doing my stand-up, I'll go around the room. Christy, you've got these 3, what's going on? Dawn, you've got these 4, Data T, Georgia, etc., all the way around. You also, though, might put the unassigned ones at the top just to force people to look at them and make sure they're assigned. So we're going to pop in. We're going to start with our team managed board and then go to a company managed board. We're in employee onboarding. Here's the board, and here's my group menu. Oh, they even changed them since I took this. I can do grouping by assignee or by category. What is category? I'm just looking at label. Weird. Sorry. The term the category isn't like a field in Jira unless you make it a custom one. It looks like category here refers to the label on the ticket. Marketing, finance, etc. Odd. Or by the priority of the ticket. Now you can expand or collapse swim lanes just so they're easier to see. But these are the options in the team managed space. Marginal utility. Popping over to the company managed space, though, I'll open up, not quick filters, I lied, grouping, and I'll start out with nothing. And I've got some options here. I have some different ones by epic. So if you're epic heavy, this is one way to do it. You also got by story. And if your board has multiple spaces worth of stuff, you can also do it by space. In this example, everything's in one space. So this is basically worthless. But I'm going to go into Mobile Cowboys, my board settings, and look under layout and look for swim lanes. Now here I have one other option. I've got this queries at the top. Some of these do have some options. Again, assignee I can change. Most of these, it just groups by that thing. But queries is where I can define my own swim lanes. I got to get rid of all these silly pop-ups. So I'm going to make a swim lane. I'm going to give it a name, high priority, priority in, highest, high. This is another example of why JQL is important to know, because when we're doing things like building swim lanes, we don't have an option to use the drop-downs. We don't have an option to use a saved filter. So I'll put a link again to that free JQL mini certification I built just to help folks understand it. But JQL is a very almost underrated skill because it shows up so much in Jira. Free JQL course right there. But this will now make a new swim lane called high priority, and the tickets that go into it will be in the highest or high priority. So I'll click create. I could make more of these. So maybe make a low priority. Low priority. Now, if I was smart, I would have added a description. I didn't. Whoops. They will appear in the order that they show up here. Also, if a ticket meets the JQL criteria for multiple swim lanes, it shows up in the first one that it meets the criteria for. For example, if this said low priority or type equals bug, every bug would get stuck under low priority because it is true that it's a bug. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind visually, I might want high priority above. And then there's also a catch-all at the bottom. If a ticket doesn't meet any of this criteria, what should I do with it? Put it in everything else. So I'm going to go back to my board. And now under groups, I have queries. And that will use that query I built. Here I've got my high priority. There's exactly one. I've got everything else. I'm going to go change the priority of this ticket just to force it to show up in low. Low priority. There we go. So this is how you can give your team flexibility. Personally, I haven't used this too much. I tend to just go by assignee, and then again, I go around the room. But you can build your own swim lane using that query feature in company managed spaces. All right. Our next session is not on Friday the 12th. It is right now. And we have a 3-way split between using swim lanes. The double yeses, though, I got to give them like 1 extra %. Maybe they won. All right, folks. Any questions, anything you want me to double back on before we just keep on trucking? And I'll wait just a minute in chat. I got to get some water. It's getting kind of warm. All right. Let's see. Are we seeing any questions? None yet. Onwards. All right. So we've covered the bulk of the exam by this point. Now we're going to talk about, though, our board appearance. Like, what options do we have when people look at the board beyond columns, beyond swim lanes? What can we do to the cards and the colors and things? Then we'll talk about estimating. How teams estimate can vary. So Jira gives us ways of doing this. I'm going to drop another data K that, no, thank you. Where I happen to live in the Bay Area usually runs pretty cool. So usually my wife is turning the heat up, which is better. Okay, what's better, story points or time estimation? What do y'all think? Fight it out. And remember, respond with a 1, 2, or 3 in chat. This is 16%, well, 28%. It's 2 chunks of the exam stuck together. So basically a quarter of it. Keep in mind, though, the biggest single part is the permissions and filters. So as you're considering where do you study, and practically, we can expect most of the challenges around those things. So appearance. We have different ways of configuring the board to look different. And this is important, right? Like, we're humans, we're visual learners. What we show to people will drastically impact how they interact with Jira. And so anything we as admins can do to make it look and feel better is important. One thing we can do are card colors. I personally don't know how much I care about this feature. All it does, if you see this purple stripe down the side, that's all it does. Now, you can do it by some kind of criteria. The priority, the assignee, the work type by default. You can also have a query. So in the same way we made our own swim lanes by defining JQuil, we can define JQuil to turn the side of a card a different color. This could be the component. This could be the team working on it. This could be the approver or something else. But this visually tells my team something. And this can be very beneficial. You only have so much space on the card. So if it's a certain color, you know then to take a certain action. This does not show up in team managed spaces. So if I see card colors, I know I'm in a company managed space. So I can do this with a query. Again, it's similar to swim lanes. I define the color I want based on JQL, and it's evaluated top down. So when Jira looks at this, it first says, is it low priority? If it is, it stops, and it makes it whatever that pinkish color is. I don't know why I can't quit FaceTime. It keeps jumping up. So we're very quickly going to go in and take a look at this. I'm in my company managed space. I'm in my board settings. I'm under layout. I'm under card colors. So I might just go by priority just to pick something. Oh, nothing has these priorities. Okay, fine. That can't be right. Yep, there we go. Okay, good. So now I've got orange here to indicate medium, green to indicate low. Again, this like, I don't know how utilitarian this is. You'll also notice we get the priority right now on the front of the card. I'll talk more about how we get this later. But these are card colors. They allow us to add a stripe of color down the side of the card. I don't know how useful it is, but it's there. The next thing is the card layout. And I've talked about this. We can add some fields to the front. Someone had a question earlier. Can we do calculated fields on it? We can display almost any field that exists on the work item on the card. This makes it easier to find and easier to look at the cards because you don't have to open up every ticket. However, it's only on company managed spaces. So we can control which fields show up on the backlog, and we can have a different set of fields show up on the board itself. Now we get up to 3 fields. We can control the order, but keep in mind the name of the field isn't shown. So if you display something like story point, you'll just get a number, 3, 8, 21, whatever. So your team has to know what's on the layout. So if I use these, I usually give my team documentation on what they're being used for, right? Like what fields are displayed and what can I use that information to do. We can also turn on days in columns though. These are the dots that show up at the bottom. This is the visual indication of this ticket has sat in this field for a period of time or in this column. This data doesn't really show up anywhere else except visually on the board. So it's one way of kind of nudging our team like, hey, I see 4 red dots on this ticket. Why has it been in architecture review for over 20 days? And then we can have a discussion about it. So it's another way to signal to our team like, hey, we need to go change something, or there's a challenge somewhere in here we need to go fix. And then just some frustrations, right? The fields must be available. So you got to have the fields on the work item to show, but the fields also don't have a name. I don't know what is medium about this ticket. I'm assuming it's priority because priority is also displayed right here. So by default, you're going to get the story point estimate, if there is one, the priority as an icon, and the assignee's head, like their profile photo. But I don't know what this means. Medium priority, medium size, medium temperature. What is this one? Like it happens to be story point. I only know that because I know that. So if someone's new to the team looking at this, they might get confused and not realize what information they're seeing. So this is why if we use this, we should tell the team what it's for and why it's important. Okay, into Jira. Most of these settings so far show up only in company managed. So I'll go to board settings, open up my layout, and I've got my card layout. So this is where I can add fields. And the annoyance here is it is every custom field in the instance. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm just going to go find priority. I'm going to pick on this because I know it's in there. You'll notice I can add them on the backlog in a different set of fields on the active sprint. So depending on how your team's working, they might need to see different information when they're estimating the next sprint versus when they're actually working on the ticket. So you can have the same fields or just choose different ones, entirely up to you. But I'll add one more field. Maybe I'll put in components. I haven't done this one. We'll see what happens. I'm only going to do it in this example on the backlog just to demonstrate. But now I'm on the backlog. Well, it doesn't help me, does it? I lied. I'm going to go put this on the sprint just so it's easier to find. Boop, boop, boop. I want a priority. And I want a component. There we go. So highest priority. And now just to add the component, I'll go find components. And I'm actually kind of curious what will happen if I add a bunch. Back end, front end. Oh, I only have one. Fine, I'll add one. And back end. But again, unless I know what is highest or what is backlog, this could be confusing. So please keep that in mind as you're configuring and developing. Like what you put here, you should tell the team what it means and why they care. Wrong way. FaceTime, go away. I had a joke of a question up earlier. What is better for estimating? It depends. Story points are something we see usually in Scrum. They are a measure of relative complexity. They are not an analog for time. For example, if someone tells me, "Oh, Rob, in our team, a story point equals 2 hours of work," you're not using story points. You're using time. So keep that in mind. Ideally, if we're going true agile, at the start of a project, we all sit down and we all agree on what is the simplest thing we could possibly do based on what we're being asked to do, and that's a 1. This means that one story point will have a different value for every project you work on and every team you work with. Just know that a 1 is the simplest thing that the team decided they could handle. That means a 21 is 21 times as complex. This does not mean it takes 21 times longer to do. For example, if I'm a brand new developer and I'm writing code, something that's a 5 won't take me 5 times as long. It might take me 20 times as long because I'm not very good. It might take Dawn twice as long because she's better, but it's more complex. So keep that in mind. You can estimate with time. Dawn's got a question, a bunch of stuff in my cards that are not displaying on the layout. Yes, there are some things that just appear on the card. My environment doesn't have pull requests like PRs or anything on development because it's not configured for that, but there will be information that just shows up on the card that the nice people at Atlassian have decided we all should have and see just because. So please keep that in mind. This includes things like the priority, like the story points, like the assignee, like the issue key. So we as board admins don't have total control over what's displayed, just moderate control, if that makes sense. Another quick reminder, hit the thumbs up button real quick. Easiest way to support me. I do this professionally, so the more support I get, the better. All right. Once you pick an estimation method, stick with it. So ideally, a team will pick story points, and that's all they use until they're done, or time. You want to be consistent, right? Estimations help us learn how to better determine how long something will take. And if we change how we evaluate things, or if we change which ones we use, it's really hard to compare and understand how long it actually takes. Now, this shows up again under our board configuration. It's not mandatory, and these do impact reporting. So if you're using them, just keep in mind, like the team should be consistent. It supports planning, but it'll change what's reported. We do have the estimation method. The default, I believe, is story point. That's just the default. You can change it on a board by board basis. So it's possible in your space, you have 2 boards. One does story points, one does time. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but it's possible. And we just, as admins, need to understand that. Now, in a team managed space, it is optional and you only get story points or time. Now, this screenshot is probably old, so we'll have to go check this. But team managed space, we can't pick a different field. In a company managed space, we get the option of choosing a different field. So it's possible we have some custom field we use that's different than just time or story points. But we can go configure it under the estimation method. So we're going to come back to that. And first, we're going to go to our team managed space under space settings and see if we can find this. Yeah, they completely got rid of the features menu. There used to be a menu here called features where you could just click buttons to turn things on or off. They have moved most of those things to this screen. So a space admin can see it. It's not even here. Like, huh. I like this hide work items. Okay. Configure. Well, maybe we can't configure it anymore. Maybe we just use the field on the ticket. Oh, that's interesting. So there must be, and again, the change I'm talking about and the change I'm puzzled about has been made since they wrote the exam. So for the purposes of the exam, we still have that features menu. For the purpose of the exam, if you're going to take it, just keep in mind you can do story points or time. That's it. One or the other, not a third option on your team managed space. In your company managed boards, however, if we go under board settings, there's an estimation menu. Now, these links that you'll find in here will go out to Atlassian documentation on the thing. So this can help you understand the concept. I always recommend reading them. But here I can pick the method. And you'll see there's a lot of different fields. This is how the team is choosing to measure effort. Certain types of custom fields will show up here, not all of them. So your team could do this by cost or quantity or something else. Typically, groups are using story points and original time estimate, just as a heads up. You can also enable time tracking on it just to help track against the estimated time. So just an option we have on this particular board to turn that feature on or off. I'm going to go to a Kanban board real quick and just see if it's any different. Board settings. You'll notice there is no estimation. So if I'm looking at a board and there's no estimation, that's Kanban by definition. This is because Kanban doesn't estimate in the same way. Agile or Scrum is concerned around story points because that gives them a number called velocity. This will come back in a minute, but Kanban is just concerned with throughput. Are we moving things through our process regularly and as streamlined as we can? They can track time, like how long did it take me to do something on a Kanban board, but they're not using it in the same way as a Scrum board. We do have a number of reports that are built out. So these are just out of the box. We can't configure them too much. For the purpose of the exam, we have to know a little bit about them. Practically, it's up to everyone to determine how much they need them. And I say this because sometimes they don't track the things we want, or because we can't modify them, they are less than useful. So please keep in mind the out-of-the-box reports are provided by the nice people at Atlassian, and they may or may not be useful to you. One of them, though, is a time tracking report. It tracks how much time was recorded, like our actuals, so the time it actually took, and then it compares that back to the time-based estimates. So very useful to see, hey, we thought it would take 400 hours. It took 312. Why was it different? Again, in company managed spaces, we can turn time tracking on or off, but keep in mind that Jira admins have to first turn on time tracking. So it's possible you're looking at this setting and you can't change it. That might mean time tracking has been turned off across your entire Jira instance. So it's possible another admin has disabled it. And also project admins will control this. So just something, a slight difference in the permission structure. A project admin, that's a board admin, can flip this, not just a board admin. There are different time tracking fields. So when we look at the ticket, there's this original estimate. That's how much time we this is how much time we think it will take when we begin the work, or initially estimate 1 hour. And then over time, we'll collect time. 15 minutes here, half an hour there. This can exceed the original estimate, but we can also change the remaining time. So just pointing out that as we're working, we might think it takes 1 hour, but then as we're going, we complete 15 minutes. We're like, oh no, this is a lot harder. There's really 4 hours of work left. This is all useful information to collect, but again, it must be enabled and the fields must be visible to work. So if you're a board admin and you're like, why doesn't time tracking work? It's possible it's been turned off for your entire site, or it's possible that the field isn't visible on your tickets. So to pop back over, I'm going to go back to the space real quick. Along the top, there's a reports tab. These are some of the reports we have. Again, we don't have to go through all of these. Here's our time tracking report, which I don't think will show anything in this particular instance. Yep, no time. No one has done any work. Makes that easy. But this will show for each work item, what was the original estimate, how much time is left as of now, how much time have we spent, and how close were our estimates. All important metrics. For the purpose of the exam, just be aware these exist and that these estimation metrics are fed into a variety of reports to help us figure out what's going on. Yes, reports. What is available depends on the type of board. For example, velocity is not used in Kanban. Velocity is an attempt to measure how many story points sprint over sprint can we accomplish? How much complexity can our team do? So that means for the next sprint, we know how much we should take on. For example, if we have 6 sprints and we've done about 40 story points, we can confidently think for the next sprint, we'll do another 40. So when we take on work, we stop at 40. I think I call out some of these. Yes. Okay, our burn down chart. It's called this because you'll notice that line is descending. It's taking the original estimate and saying every time we complete a ticket, subtract that many story points. Ideally, this just keeps going down. If you see this popping up, it means work was added or story points were added, which is not usually a good thing. This is only used in Scrum. So if you hear someone talking about burn down, it means they're in Scrum, not Kanban. There is a sprint report though. Again, it's a sprint, so it's got to be in Scrum. This keeps track of changes to scope, where things being added or removed, as well as estimates. Very, very useful practically. We probably won't see too many questions on the exam about it, but keep in mind there's a number of these reports that help us manage the sprint. What shows up on here is directly impacted by how we set up the board. So how we're choosing to do estimates will change the metrics that show up here. Here's an example of that velocity chart. The gray line is how much the team committed to doing for the sprint. The green line is how much they actually did. So we can see this team tends to overcommit. The gray bar tends to be a lot higher than the green bar, but they have an average. So that's telling me every sprint, this team on average can take on 112 story points of work. And that's just their average. They're not very consistent. Like what happened here? Maybe a bunch of people weren't in that week. And what happened here? We overcommitted quite a bit. The point is with the reports, they're driven by how we set up the board and they help the team improve and change over time. All right. Whew. I think I've got one last thing to talk about the exam. Was that it? That was all of them. Wow. All right, folks. So that was all the hands-on configuration stuff. How do we get to the charts? Oh, I'm sorry, Don. That is a brilliant question, my friend. I've opened up a space, so I'm on my Scrum board. It's this tab right here, reports. We only have you only have access to the reports that are in here. We can't add new ones to this screen, and we can't modify the reports. These will be like blank or very weird looking because I don't have anything in here. But I can't really do much to change these. I can click to drill down in some cases. So what was on this first sprint? Like here's the sprint report for that sprint. Again, this is all demo data. It goes back to 2002, so this is not realistic at all. But these are some of those reports we have access to. They show up under the reports tab. There's so many backlinks. Reports tab right here. Your space admin can move this around. So if it's not in the exact same spot, just take a look for it or click more. It might be hiding somewhere in here. All right, folks, that was all the exam content. Again, I cover all of that in the courses linked above, and that goes to a link of 2 courses, the ACA-910, which is Jira Service Management, and I'll put a link just to the ACA-905. The link I'm going to send includes an exam voucher. So if you want to take the exam, this is a great deal, $30. You get about 2 hours of content plus quizzes plus mock exams. Get the course here. I do have an option as well without the exam voucher if you just want the content. And I'll put that next link here. Same content, just voucher or no voucher. I'm going to shift gears and talk about like the exam itself. Now, we have gone through all the content of the exam. That is necessary, but not sufficient to pass. Just sitting with me for a little over 2 hours is not enough to really master the content. You got to get hands-on. You're going to have to study on your own. You're going to have to do things like go to the Atlassian community, under learning, under credentials, go down, look for this. I'll put this link in the chat too, under Jira board config. And in the middle, they've got to start prepping for free. These are additional free resources. You can go and learn this content. So hit start prepping for free. And these courses will help you build your knowledge. They'll be similar to what we've covered, different perspective, and they'll help build on it. But here's 90 minutes of free content to help you learn how to configure your boards. And this one has another hour or something like that, just the basics. So everything in here is everything on the exam. Definitely worth getting for free. When you're ready to schedule your exam, though, you'll have to click on schedule your exam. And I will point out they are retiring the 905. That's why I'm doing this like marathon session. We will not be able to sign up for this exam soon. So if you want to earn it, you got to move quick. You need to either, pay through Atlassian or get a voucher through my course or somewhere else. But then you'll come in here to Certiverse, which is the exam platform Atlassian uses, and you'll sign up. JW is pointing out, yeah, please make sure you take time to study. When I study for these, I have a notepad and I'm just writing down notes, and then I make flashcards, and then I drill those flashcards, and then eventually I feel ready. Now, before I schedule my exam, I take a look at a calendar and I go, what's happening in the next month of my life? I'll give myself 3 weeks of extra study time before I take the exam. And for some reason, Certiverse is stuck. Let me back up. So I'll schedule my exam out, 2 to 4 weeks in advance. And that gives me pressure. That puts something on the calendar and says, hey, Rob, you're going to do this. You've committed. You've paid. It's on the calendar. You got to do it now. That also helps me focus my studying. Again, the biggest single chunk of this exam are the permissions. Where'd it go? Are permissions and filters. So when I'm studying in those last 2 to 3 weeks, I'm focusing on this and on this, because that's more than half. So I like that time pressure. It helps ensure I actually do the studying because it's on the calendar and I've got some skin in the game. I've paid for it. But when I'm ready to sign up, I'll come here and click exams and I'll look for the 905. And it looks like, yep, it's available at a discount through Atlassian. And also I've got them on my course for $30. Otherwise, it was $100 to take this. So they're offering it at a nice discount if you want to learn it. But then just click Get Started. You'll have to do a system compatibility check. You cannot take these exams in person in a testing center anymore. They're all online. So you have to make sure your computer works with it. I'll say, yes, I've done this, because I have. And then you'll have information about the exam. They do offer accommodations. So just follow this link if you need any kind of accommodation. But keep in mind, once you start your exam, you can't leave the room. No one can come interrupt you. No kids, no adults, no pets. So I tend to take this, honestly, in my kid's bedroom during the day, because I'll be alone and I know no one will interrupt me. You also have to have a clean environment. I use this as an excuse to clean my office or clean the area. But someone will be watching through your camera and listening through your microphone just to make sure you're not cheating. But I would come in here and a couple weeks in advance, I'll take it at 9:30, and you'll get 1 hour to take this particular exam. I can't actually schedule this because I already hold this exam. If you get a voucher through me, put it in this field. In this field, put it here. Or if you're paying by credit card, you would just accept and continue. From here, you would then log into your exam. Now, once you're taking it, just some words of advice, you'll be presented questions similar to, I'll go find one real quick. Yeah, sure, this one. Come on. Similar to this. This version of the exam will have the question and then 4 possible answers. One answer will be correct. Your job is to figure out which one. Now, the exam itself won't give you any feedback. That's why the practice information here in Atlassian Learning is so nice. It explains why, it justifies all the answers. When you're reading this, though, look for keywords. Okay, something about a backlog. Arranging work items. And then think through, what could that mean? From here, eliminate things that don't matter. Okay, this is talking about sprints, but nothing in the question mentions sprints, so I can ignore that. That eliminates one possible answer. So while I'm going, I'm trying to eliminate things I know are false, but if I see one thing where I'm like, oh, hey, that sounds right, I'll click on it and I'll click continue. My own personal preference, if I have a good feeling on it, I trust my intuition. You can flag questions, though, to review later. So if you're not sure, always put unanswer, just in case you run out of time. You always want something on the board, but pick an answer, and there'll be a button that says review later or flag for review. Click on that, and then keep going. When you're done with all the questions and hit done, you'll be able to go back and review the questions you flagged for review. Please do that. I take these tests really quickly. It takes me 20-ish minutes to do one of these. I always force myself to go back and review everything I flagged. And then I randomly pick 5 or 10 questions to just double check. So make sure you're taking time. You're thinking through the question. You're looking for clues, something about rearranging, something about backlogs, and then you're eliminating answers that don't make sense or you don't think are correct. So that's the best advice on taking it. Once you complete the exam, you'll know within about a minute of your success or your opportunity to improve. It won't tell you what questions you got right or wrong. It'll tell you based on the exam breakdown. So once you complete it, you'll get just a screen saying, hopefully, congratulations, you passed. And then here's how much of each section of the exam you got. So if you happen not to pass, it'll tell you, oh, you didn't get anything right in boards and permissions. So if you want to take it again, you know where to continue studying. All right, folks. That is everything on this particular certification, the 905. What other questions do y'all have? What other concepts or topics you want me to go over again before we wrap up? So please use the chat. I'll drop this in here. What questions do y'all have? We've had some good ones as we go. Hopefully I've been able to answer them, but what other questions are floating around? I want to make sure you have time to ask them. We'll also remind folks, I have a Discord and a WhatsApp community, links in the chat, and I'm available on LinkedIn if you ever need help. Any one of those spots, it's fair to come find me. While folks are going, just a reminder, I've got this bundle of courses that are being retired, the 910 and the 905. We've missed the window to sign up for the 910. It's just retired. You'll still get the course though and all the knowledge. And I also have just the Jira boards one separately. So here's a 3-hour course on it. One includes an exam voucher, one does not. So I'll put these in the chat as well. Oh no, Me6 isn't working? Let me go get a better one for you right now. Hang on. Me6 is an app I use to help me manage things, and sometimes it just decides not to work. Invites. Copy link. Paste the link. Try this, people. I wonder how many other people are having a challenge with it that I just didn't know about. All right, so I'll drop a link to these courses. This one includes an exam voucher course. Wow, course with voucher. I like Justin's comment here. My brain took too much. Yes, this was a lot. Again, we covered the entire thing. When I did this originally, it was spread over 4 weeks. So 4 1-hour sessions with a week between. Anyone else get the pun in there? Course without voucher. This second link goes to the course without the exam voucher. I think I got the right one. I lied. Maybe it's this one. Oh, no, I got it right. Okay. Otherwise, folks, we have covered everything about the 905. Again, act quick. I don't know when we will be unable to sign up for it or earn it. So if you're looking to earn this, I highly recommend you study, you get ready, and you take it soon. They announced the 910 being retired and felt like a week later it was gone. I don't know if it'll move that quickly here. But either way, even if you don't take this exam, the knowledge about how to configure boards is very, very useful. Practically, you will use this regularly to support your team, to help explain things, and to just do better at your work. So please make sure you have time to review, but also reach out for help if and when you need it. Do I have somewhere? Hang on, folks. I've got a sound effect somewhere. Nope, I don't know where it went. Sorry. Oh, there's a boo. Oh, wow. So many sound effects. Anyway, folks, we are all done. I want to thank you for sticking with me for 2.5 hours talking about Jira boards. I hope you found it useful. Christy, I'm glad you found it worthwhile. My goal is to make sure people aren't frustrated and confused by these systems. Hopefully this helped you get there. Please take some time to review. The recordings available on YouTube. There's tons of free stuff over at Lasting Learning as well to help you learn this stuff. Again, I care more that people learn how to use it. So if you have any kind of hardship, any kind of trouble getting into the exam, let me know. I'll see what I can do to help you out. Anyway, folks, I'm going to sign off and go continue on my Friday. But have a great weekend. I have study sessions next week for the 120, the Jira admin, and the 915 wrapping up, which is Jira Cloud Foundations. Otherwise, folks, I'll see you soon and have a good one. Oh, and I need my outro video. All right. Cheers.
Systems shouldn't get in our way. They should help us do our job, but learning those tools can feel heavier than it should. Too many topics, too many best practices, especially in the ever-changing Atlassian ecosystem. Not here. You're tuned in to the only frequency that doesn't crash your spirits or your Jira board. Atlassian Learning Simplified.
Welcome to Heen.tech. Heen.tech for your learning needs. Heen.tech. Less noise, more clarity. Heen.tech. Fix the system, fix the flow. Heen.tech. Ready, let's go!